If you're a sports fan, you understand the importance of coaching when it comes to the success of your teams and for the development of your players. Coaches are like managers. They have the similar skill sets from a management position, and that is what we're going to talk about today. I'm bringing on a coach that's new in the coaching world, and they're going to explain what they've learned during their short tenure as a coach. We'll break it down today on the Game Time Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time! Woo!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome out to another episode of the Game Time Guru. You know me, I'm your host, Shane Larson, coming to you today with a good topic that I feel is actually necessary, judging by some of the games I've been watching in various sports, actually, and that is the topic of coaching. And to join me today, I've got Derek Etzel in the house. Now, Derek was on the show back when it originally started in January of 2017. You guys might remember him. We talked about some NBA things. We even talked about some football back in the day. But Derek has joined me again, flash forward another year and a couple months. So Derek, let's have you introduce yourself and talk about what you've been up to in the last year.
Yeah, I'm excited to do this. But yeah, the past year has been great. I had the opportunity to step on at the varsity level. I was helping out with club ball, and I was offered a position to assistant coach at Meridian High School.
What else is going on in your life right now?
Other than that, working on a couple side hustles right now, business ideas, obviously always learning and progressing. And yeah, other than that, my family just moved to Germany, so just trying to stay busy while they're gone.
So that's big news. Derek's been up to a lot in the last year. Business stuff, as we all know, we're all trying to progress and learn, as well as coaching, which is one of his passions. Now, Derek and I actually met at bodybuilding.com. We worked there together, and at that time, we worked in a customer service environment. And one thing's for certain, in my opinion, this is one thing, Derek. I kind of actually want your opinion too, but I noticed in a customer service setting that sometimes the best customer service representatives don't always make the best managers because they're totally different skill sets altogether. Would you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, different. I remember when I first coached agents, in a call center environment, it was definitely different. I'd never been a part of that. So yeah, completely different because you're so used to doing it your way. And it's completely different trying to help someone understand why you do it that way, I guess.
Exactly. So like that's how I'm thinking of it. And when I became a QA coach and I was trying to coach, that's exactly what it was as a QA coach. I was trying to coach agents in the customer service setting on, how they should do one thing. You can't just say, well, I used to do this and I was the best rep on the floor, blah, 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 blah. I had the best stats. Like, it doesn't work that way. You have to actually coach them because everybody has their own unique style. And so the best reps, the best customer service reps don't always make the best managers. In fact, typically they don't. Like, that's actually how it usually goes. Like, most of the time you'll actually see people that are terrible customer service reps that actually make the best managers because it's a different skill set altogether. I oftentimes find that the best players don't also make the best coaches because coaching is a completely different skill set when it comes to sports. Now you've started this whole, the coaching path here in the last year, like you said, coaching club versus high school. But what are some of the skills that it takes to be a successful coach, in your opinion?
Well, for me, and I'm sure every coach would answer this question differently, but for me, I would have to say patience is huge, because you want to see progress right away, Right. So you're helping out young kids, and obviously they're younger than you, played the game just like I did, and you want them to just, figure it out, and quicker than it might actually show up on the court. There's a lot of patience involved and motivation, and trying to understand kind of where they're coming from. They're younger They're not as athletic. They might not be fully grown, especially if you have like a sophomore on varsity, compared to a senior. There's just a different, you're going through puberty, you're becoming an athlete, you're starting to work out more, so your body's changing.
Man, those are very interesting points because I kind of want to get to that in a little bit as well. Like you're dealing with young men at this level right now, and they're all at different stages of their puberty levels and their maturity, and they've got attitudes and stuff. Yeah. And I was one of them. Like, I understand it. That's why I want to bring it up, because patience is huge as a coach. And typically, from my experience, sometimes like those coaches, they can have patience to a certain extent, but then it's just the way they have to. It's like being a parent essentially, but you're being a parent to other people's kids that are, teenagers in your situation. Now, where did you begin your coaching journey? You mentioned club ball. Can you explain where you began coaching in club ball? What you were doing?
Yeah. So, I got the opportunity basically. She was part of a boot camp, and the person that was in charge of the boot camp, her husband has been, coaching for a long time. He played at University of Washington, and then he's been coaching club ball, I think, ever since. And so I reached out to him through my stepmom and just basically told him I have a passion for basketball and I'd like to learn more of the coaching side. And he took me under his wing. And the club team was called Boise Slam here in the Treasure Valley, if you've heard of that.
Yep.
I didn't get to travel with the team because of, work, obviously. And I was just trying to learn as much as possible from him. So, any tournament that was local, all the practices and scrimmages I got to be a part of. So that was fun. A lot of fun.
And that's cool because I had a podcast a little, like probably more in the summertime last year. I had Adam Rankin on, and he was discussing club basketball, and we were comparing it to other organized basketball around the valley here. And because Idaho club basketball is now beginning to grow, it's a big thing, and it's cool that you got to be in that realm. What did you learn in club ball though that's different than the high school game that you're coaching now?
Well, the one difference that I noticed, obviously I haven't been around it a whole lot, but it's seemed like the they played with when they were super young. They grew up playing with these guys, so they want to get on the same club team. I feel like it is more geared towards player development, as to like what I saw. Obviously you still coach a certain way and but obviously they're in the off season and they're trying to get better as basketball players. So there was definitely a lot more player development that I noticed.
So here's what I thought. Club basketball wasn't a big thing. It was not a big thing when I was in school. And let's just rewind about 12 to 14 years ago when I was going through the high school basketball game, just kind of going up through the ranks. And yeah, there was only like two clubs here, and one was Idaho Select and one was Boise Flight. And that was it. Like the rest was AAU coming up. Like the younger kids played AAU or Y ball. And now I noticed that like those club teams, sometimes they put together some good teams. They're kids that have been playing together for so long. Just a few years ago, Hoop Dreams had some of the best talent around in the Valley. They had Isaiah Wright, EJ Boyce. There's obviously multiple others, like Ryland Bergeson was playing. There's so many different players playing all together. It's like an all-star team. It's like to me, the club ball can almost become, it's more fun in the sense of you're putting superstars together on a team, and they're having fun with it. I don't know. Maybe that's just from the outsider's perspective, but that's how it always looked for me for club ball compared to high school. Because in high school, it's kind of based on your territory and where you live. Yeah.
The better players in that area, you're going to get, but other areas, might be scarce where, in club ball, I was hearing stories of, because Idaho's very rural, right? It's not a huge metropolitan area. So kids were driving, from Fruitland, good basketball players to be on, these different club teams here in the Valley. Even kids in Pocatello, one club team in Pocatello or something like that. So a lot of them drive to Boise to play club ball.
Interesting, man. Yes, that's an interesting point. So you assisted at the varsity level, like you told us earlier. We're in the high school realm. Is there anything that you learned specifically this last year that you didn't know before? So you learned something in club ball. Obviously, that's where you got started. But what did you learn that you can implement going forward with coaching?
I learned that, the players are going to listen to you. At first, being a new coach, I was definitely a little bit more tentative than I should have been. Confidence is huge. I've been playing the game for a long time. I watch a lot of basketball. So I feel like I have a good understanding of the game, but just having these players will listen to you. If you notice something, you got to be confident with your demeanor when you talk to them. So that's one thing that I want to implement going forward, that voice. They look to you as a role model. And since I'm a younger guy, they look to me, as a role model.
No, for sure. That's always, I always liked having younger coaches to be around us. The assistants were cool because they seem to be the more relatable ones. Like the head coach for us would always be the more strict one. The younger guys that were the assistants were the more relatable ones, and it kind of balanced itself out. I'm excited to see where you go going forward as far as like the coaching. It's kind of crazy because that career, you can't just step into it and dominate. Some people are born for it, like to just do it, but you still have to go through the ranks. It's like any kind of job. You kind of have to put your time in and, earn your credibility, right? Like,
yeah, certainly. And, networking too, just like in the business world, be open to meeting other coaches, learn from them. But yeah, I totally agree.
The one thing I wanted to bring up is the fact that coaching is so difficult because you have to be able to adapt. You have to be able to adapt. And when you're dealing with younger guys like yourself, like we're not even at the college or professional level, you've got to be able to adapt to the talent that you have on the court. And let's just be real. I mean, in high school, you're kind of given what you're given, and you have to make the best of what you got. So you've got to be able to utilize your strengths and kind of shy away from the weaknesses and try to cover those up. And it takes a lot of skill from a coaching standpoint, in my opinion, because you have to always be putting in an offense that is more, I guess, geared towards your specific team, your specific skill sets. And that's kind of what I wanted to get into. The different styles of coaching. You and I both played basketball growing up, like we said earlier, you're dealing with guys that are maturing. Some are faster than others, and there's a lot of emotion you have to deal with, a lot of attitude. I mean, for me specifically, I always got in trouble for my attitude on the court. It was always like, there's egos. And during that time, especially for me, right? Like during that time, my sophomore, junior year in high school, my specific high school, we had a varsity coach who had been coaching varsity for quite some time and was pretty reputable, but he ended up leaving right before my senior year. So my senior year, we got a new coach at the varsity level. So we had two different coaches, and a lot of our players going into our senior year were used to one coaching style. And then a lot of us that were coming up from the other ranks, and we were new to the varsity level at the senior year, we were used to the new coach's coaching style because we had him before, because he was a JV coach. Anyways, there was just two different styles of coaching. And what I wanted to talk about is like you have these rigid and strict coaches and maybe some more laid backs and empathetic coaches. What would you call yourself? What kind of style do you have, or do you see yourself having going forward?
I definitely would like to have both, right? Both traits. But I definitely am more of a relatable. So, I guess the more empathetic side, just because I'm definitely a people person. But you definitely have to have some sort of an edge to get some of the players going. Just like you said about adapting. You have to adapt to your player personnel, yes, but you have to adapt your coaching style based on, like you said, their attitudes. You might have someone that, gets down on themselves a lot. You have to be able to motivate that player, not put them down as much. But then you might have a very, very confident player, and he might be really, really good, but you have to find ways to motivate him and get the best out of him and not always tell him all the goods. Then he might get a little full of himself, you want to push the right buttons at the right times.
Yeah, adapting is so difficult though. Like that is the thing when you are dealing. I try to put myself in my coach's shoes sometimes when I look back, and as I'm getting older now, and I'm seeing the younger generation come up, and I go to a couple games here and there, and I'm like, man. I mean, there's some similarities between the way that they play now, and then there's some big differences. Like, but some of the attitudes, I can see myself in some of the kids, and there's other times where I'm like, dude, I would never have done that. The way that they were acting, and I'm like, dude, this would be so hard to be a coach, and just have to deal with that like all the time and have to adapt. But that is such a big part of life is adapting, and I think that's why coaches have a very, very difficult job because you're adapting to so many different things, and it's different every year. That's the thing. It's never a consistent thing. Like in any level, whether it be, the youth going into high school, college, or professional, coaches never have the same team. That always changes. And so you just have to kind of keep moving forward. Do you think it's more important for coaches to adapt to the players or for the players to adapt to the coaches? Obviously both, but I mean, is important, but what's the most important piece?
Obviously, yeah, I think the right answer is both, but coming from our perspective, of course, I would say the coach to the player. You are the older, especially at this level. Maybe in the pros, it might be a little bit different. But at the high school level, they're under 18, and you're older than them. So I think you have to adapt to them more so. And, because they're looking to you as a role model. So you definitely have to push the right buttons with each individual player. They're still developing as men. So it definitely makes it tough, because you have to be able to relate with each one,
I totally agree with that too, because I mean, while I think it's important for the kids to show some respect to the coaches, like I love your point on they're still young men, still trying to develop and mature at this level that you're coaching. I mean, yeah, you've already been there. So you got to be the more mature one. You got to be able to adapt and kind of lead by example. I have seen, and I want to see what you could go through after you've been coaching. You've seen other coaches too, not just the coach that you're under and that you're helping out, but the other coaches from other teams. It's crazy to see their different styles and how they adapt. Like I said, we had two different coaches. My senior year, our coach made one pretty big change, switched the offense completely. To my opinion, I believed it was very beneficial for us. While it limited some of our playmakers, it actually really, really opened up the ability for one of our biggest playmakers, who happened to be our biggest guy on the team, tallest guy, and he got the ball in his hands more. And was able to more so face up, because he moved him from the post out to more of a 3, so he could actually face up from the wing and drive. So that was like one of the biggest adjustments that I thought we made. And I mean, obviously by our records show that it improved, but we had a lot of, there was a lot of transitioning issues with other players that were used to the other coaching style. But what have you noticed that, like, what's your favorite thing about some of the coaches, maybe not just your coach, but what have you seen that you can implement from other coaches that you've been around and you guys have played against this last season?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I was truly focused on our guys and player personnel for being a motivator as an assistant coach. So I really didn't pay too much attention to other coaches. But as far as just game goes, you should be able to implement, during practice and during summer, different kinds of offenses, even if they are just pretty basic, but it might be something that you could build upon later on, especially after watching game film and you're seeing, a team play zone and you want to run a certain type of zone offense. But you haven't played zone all year. You haven't played a team that plays zone all year, but you want to keep that in the bag of tricks, later down the road, just in case someone does, play zone on you. I would say for me, that word adapt, is really crucial when it comes to coaching, because each team is watching your film, and you're watching their film. So, I just like to think of it as like a chess match, that's continually going. And it makes it tough because they might throw something out at you that you haven't seen yet, a set play that you haven't seen on film yet. And I mean, it is what it is, but You just have to roll with it.
You're bringing up like the changes and the you have to think on your feet. It's a chess match. Perfect way to say it. And I'm going to go into the next segment here, talking about the Eagles coaching staff in the NFL. Now, I've said this multiple times on my show since the Eagles played the Cowboys the first time this last season. I've been saying this. That's why I said they were going to win the Super Bowl after they played the Cowboys the first time. I said is because their coaching was unbelievable. The adjustments that they made at halftime and the way they were able to basically win the chess match every single game. I knew that even when Carson Wentz went down, they had a good chance at winning because their coaching staff was unbelievable. And it kind of, this whole cycle of like coaching, if you can throw something at a team, like you see with what they're doing and you can catch them off guard first with something else, that's how you win. Against the Cowboys, the Eagles started running trap plays. They ran like 6 in a row. For some reason, the Cowboys couldn't adjust to it. Well, just this last weekend, I go to the state championship games for Idaho. I was watching the 4A and the 5A championship games. In the 4A championship game for basketball, it was, I believe, in the third quarter, and it was, I think it was tied going into the third quarter, but one of the teams decided they started pressing first, and then they ran a zone. For like 3 or 4 straight possessions, they ran a zone. They hadn't been running zone all night. Well, what that did is it threw off the other team. The other team was they were used to the whole way that it was going the whole first half. All of a sudden, you make one quick change, and I believe it was like a 7 or 8 point run to start the third quarter in that championship game, which kind of swung the momentum the other direction. And I mean, it's like you just said, you have to play this chess match. It's kind of interesting that you mentioned that. What's like, in your opinion, let's go to football. Who's the best coaching staff in your opinion?
I honestly thought the Vikings were going to win the Super Bowl. Going in, the Vikings were the hottest team. They had the best defense. So my money was on the Vikings, and I was wrong. Came in, they adapted against the Vikings, and they dominated that game in the NFC Championship. So
yeah, the Eagles coaching staff was unreal, and that's what I kind of wanted to use as an example going forward for coaching. It's just amazing to see how they did it. And other professional sports like basketball, for instance, I wanted to touch base on this: the importance of coaching for anyone and how it can help a team. Obviously, the Eagles win the Super Bowl, but I know you're a Kobe guy. You're a Lakers fan, huge Kobe fan. And I wanted to touch base on Kobe and Michael. They had Phil Jackson. And we can always say, like, you know, Michael was one of the most talented athletes. So was Kobe. Obviously, I believe they're both top 3 or top 4 all time in this whole discussion of who's the greatest. And then there's LeBron James, who's in the discussion for the greatest of all time. And we're looking at his coaches that he's gone through. Now, how much of a factor do you think Phil Jackson played in those title runs for both Kobe and Michael?
You know, a lot, because he did it with both of them. You know, obviously you need other teammates around, you know, those players to win championships too. That's why Kobe really didn't win until he got Pau Gasol later on. So you definitely need help. You know, I don't know if you were going to bring up LeBron's coaches too in this situation. I think Phil Jackson played a huge part in Kobe and Michael's titles. Where LeBron, I think a lot of it has to do with LeBron. You know, so, and that goes to speak for his greatness. So it's definitely an interesting talk about those 3 now. And, you know, I definitely have a lot of respect now for LeBron. I've never really liked him, but I mean, you have to respect his greatness. I mean, he's truly, the only player to have 30,000 points, 8,000 rebounds, 8,000 assists. It's pretty crazy.
No, for sure. I mean, I used to hate Kobe, but I've gained a huge respect for Kobe Bryant and his game over probably the past 5 or 6 years, really. As I look through it, I just was, you know, people make the argument all the time, like LeBron didn't have a Hall of Fame coach, whereas Phil Jackson arguably is the best coach to ever coach outside of Greg Popovich and maybe a few others. I bet Steve Kerr will probably get there one day. But some of these guys, like you see the coaches that a lot of these players have, such as, you know, the Warriors even have Steve Kerr, which is the Greg Popovich line down, as well as Phil Jackson, because he played for him. And it's just crazy to see that they had such a good coach and LeBron hasn't. But it's like you said, like LeBron is a tougher guy in the sense of like he wants to be kind of like the coach. So this is where coaching's so important. Like LeBron has a different demeanor than Kobe, like Jordan Clarkson said. He has a different demeanor, a different way of leading. He basically wants to be the coach. So how do you coach a player? This is me asking you, Derek. How do you coach a player that wants to be the coach?
You know, obviously with professionals, you know, and LeBron being in the league so long, it fine line there. And I think that's why a lot of coaches kind of take a back seat to him. I'm sure he's a coach, but it's different. We talked about this last time, the first time we talked. It's just different, environment in that situation when you're in the pros compared to, high school coaching, because the players look to you as role models where, LeBron's definitely not looking to you as a role model, game. So I definitely, you kind of have to take a back seat and definitely motivate him and push him to continue doing what he's doing because it's working. Still want to, I'm sure, put in an offense that fits your player personnel. I don't know. I've never been in that situation, with one of the greatest basketball players of all time. So it's definitely interesting.
No, for sure. I just wanted to get your thoughts on it, man. It'd be a tough thing, and that's why I try to give coaches the most respect I possibly can. To end the show, it's going to be the Guru's Gauntlet. Just going to go through a few questions with you, Derek, that you can answer with as much as you want, or it can be a quick response. It depends on however you want to answer it. But I'm going to start here, since this is going to be a topic of discussion on a podcast anyways, which will probably launch this week before this podcast with me and you actually launches. So it's about the shot clock in high school basketball. Should we have one?
Yes.
From a coach's perspective in high school basketball, if you have a shot clock, how does that change your preparation for a game?
That's a good question. I would have to see how it played out for a little while. But yeah, it would be interesting because I think games would be just a lot closer, towards the end. You see these teams, they get up by, 15, 20, and they're just going to move the ball and they're not going to shoot, so you have to pressure them and try to force them or, foul a bad foul shooter. It would be interesting. I don't know. I'd have to see it for a little while to see how I would adjust my coaching style to it. But I think it needs to be implemented, but that's my personal opinion.
I like it. Who's the best coach of all time in any sport?
Yeah, I'd say Coach K.
Coach
Definitely.
K. Coach K, and why? I want to know the why.
The way they play the game. Obviously, they've had top recruits there, and so is Kentucky. But I feel like Duke has always gone a little bit further, and I'm talking about recently, during the Calipari days. And a lot because I'm a North Carolina fan and I see the rivalry. It seems very relatable. Like, I don't know if you saw senior night when Grayson Allen came out of Carolina and just, the way his coach and how stoked Coach K was on his senior night. All that kid's been through relates to his players. But, yeah.
All right. I like it, man. So last question for you here. Referees, how do you handle the referees when it comes to coaching? Do you like them? What's your relationship with a referee if you're a head coach of a basketball team? Do you like them or do you not?
Try to get on their good side. If I ever become a head coach, I'm definitely Shane knows this, but I try to be on everyone's good side. So I definitely try to get on the ref's good side. But kind of like what we were talking about before with some of the players, even though that's your main, personality trait, you still have to have some sort of edge, and be able to, persuade, I guess, the refs, because there are times where it seems like they don't know the game as well as you, or you see something they didn't. And, but I definitely would want to be on their good side. So they want to give me calls.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah.
All right, man. So where should we expect to see Derek Etzel in 10 years in regards to coaching? Do you intend on continuing on the path to coaching and learning more and becoming a head coach one day, or what's your plans going forward in that career path?
Well, definitely like we were talking about earlier about progressing. I'm always trying to progress and learn more, so in this time, I'm just going to be a sponge and absorb as much as possible, especially to see Meridian turn around. This year we had a good year compared to the last, 8 or 9 years had trouble with basketball. So I'm going to just learn as much as possible. But 10 years down the road, I would hope to be coaching basketball. but it kind of depends on my career path. And, if I have time, I definitely always want to do it. I'd like to have an impact in these kids' lives and, share my passion of basketball with them.
Well, I appreciate you joining me, Derek. And for everybody out there who's listening, I hope you guys learned something about coaching or enjoyed the discussion regarding coaches. And hopefully you guys can continue to support the podcast, support Derek as well. Keep an eye on him and look out for what he's got coming forward. He's going to be doing some business stuff on the side. He'll have some good ideas that he'll probably implement here soon, as well as his coaching career. So if you see Derek Etzel in the news one day, maybe I'll be able to say, I got him on here first. I appreciate you tuning in. We'll talk to you next week. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review. It would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.